The GPS signal flickered twice before sending the horse trailer down a narrow dirt road in rural Montana, and Frank Miles felt that familiar twist of doubt in his gut. He slowed the truck and leaned forward, squinting through the dusty windshield. According to the delivery papers resting on the seat beside him, he was supposed to arrive at Meadowbrook Ranch, a high-end equestrian facility known for polished fences and expensive horses. What stood in front of him instead was a small, worn-down property with crooked paddocks, a converted old barn, and a faded wooden sign that read Meadowbrook Healing Stables. Frank let out a low breath and pulled the rig to a stop. This was not right. The place looked humble, almost forgotten. Nothing like the glossy brochures he had been shown. Off near the barn, an elderly woman in mud-stained overalls slowly led what looked like a miniature pony across the yard. Frank shook his head and muttered under his breath as he climbed down from the cab. The woman turned toward him, her face lined deep from years of sun and work. She walked closer with a cautious look. She introduced herself as Dorothy Mallister, 71 years old, voice calm but curious. Frank told her he had a delivery from Meadowbrook Ranch. One gelding. Midnight's Verdict. A premium show jumper worth nearly $200,000. Dorothy's eyes widened behind thick glasses. She gently corrected him, explaining that this was Meadowbrook Healing Stables, a small, therapeutic riding center for children with special needs. The fancy ranch he wanted was likely Meadowbrook Estates, many miles north. Frank listened, but the low sun and the grinding sound his transmission had been making for the last 50 miles weighed on him. He told her his orders were clear. The paperwork named this address. Once he unloaded the horse, the problem would no longer be his. Before Dorothy could stop him, Frank opened the trailer door. What stepped out made Dorothy forget her protests. Midnight's Verdict stood tall and powerful, a massive black warmblood with a coat that shined like polished stone. Every muscle showed careful breeding and years of elite training. Yet, it was not his size or beauty that caught her breath. It was his eyes. They were empty, not wild or proud, but distant, like something inside him had gone quiet. As the horse was led into a temporary paddock, Dorothy noticed old pressure marks on his mouth and the way his body held itself tight and tired. This was not a horse worn out from work. This was a horse worn down by something deeper. Frank handed her a thick envelope of documents, wished her luck in a tone that carried no warmth, and drove away, leaving dust hanging in the air. Alone now, Dorothy opened the papers and slowly read a story written in cold notes and short judgments. Midnight's Verdict had been rejected 3 times in 8 months. Refused to jump. Unpredictable behavior. Dangerous for competition. One trainer had written that the horse was beautiful but broken, and recommended retirement or resale for non-performance use. Dorothy closed the folder and looked back at the horse, standing motionless in the paddock. She spoke softly, almost to herself, saying it seemed they had both received something unexpected that day. Midnight's Verdict did not react. He simply stared ahead, as if the world no longer asked anything of him, and he expected nothing in return. The next morning, Dorothy's granddaughter, Olivia, arrived. At 28, Olivia helped run the therapy programs and worked as an occupational therapist. She stopped short when she saw the massive horse. As she read through the documents, her expression grew serious. She explained that the notes showed signs of learned helplessness. The horse was not defiant. His will had been broken. Someone had pushed him too hard, too young, using harsh methods until he shut down completely. That afternoon, phone calls revealed even more confusion. The wrong ranch had expected a different horse. Midnight's Verdict's buyer in California had gone bankrupt. His owner, a wealthy investor named Sterling Moore, was overseas and unreachable. No one knew what to do, and no one seemed in a hurry to claim him. Dorothy decided the horse would stay for now. That evening, as the sun dipped low, something happened that made her heart stop. A 9-year-old therapy student named Wesley, a quiet boy with autism who rarely spoke, wandered away from his routine and walked straight to Midnight's Verdict's paddock. Before anyone could react, the boy climbed through the fence and stood directly in front of the huge horse. Dorothy rushed forward in fear, but then she froze. Midnight's Verdict slowly lowered his head until it was level with the child's face. Wesley reached out and placed one small hand on the horse's nose. Neither moved. The yard fell silent. For several long minutes, boy and horse stood together, calm and still, as if they shared an understanding no one else could see. Then Wesley spoke, clear and steady, saying that the horse was sad and that it was okay here. When the boy walked away smiling, Midnight's Verdict watched him go. For the first time since arriving, something flickered in the horse's eyes. It was small, but it was there. The change did not come all at once, and Dorothy did not pretend it did. For the first week after Wesley's quiet moment in the paddock, Midnight's Verdict still spent long hours standing still, ears relaxed but eyes distant. He ate when feed was placed in front of him, and drank when thirsty, yet he showed no interest in the world beyond simple survival. Dorothy did not push him. She had learned long ago that healing could not be forced. Each morning she brought a bucket and sat just outside his stall. She talked in a low voice about small things. She spoke about the weather rolling in from the hills, about the children who would arrive later that day, about her late husband and the way he used to whistle while fixing fences. Midnight's Verdict did not turn his head, but he listened. Dorothy could tell by the slight flick of his ears. When Wesley returned for his next therapy session, he went straight to the paddock again. This time Dorothy was ready. She stayed close, heart steady but alert. The boy did not rush the horse. He sat in the grass and drew shapes in a notebook, quietly explaining each picture. Midnight's Verdict slowly stepped closer until his shadow covered the boy. He stood there, unmoving, offering comfort without being asked. Word spread among the children. They began asking about the big black horse who did not mind silence. Dorothy set strict rules. No shouting, no sudden moves, no riding, just being present. One child read stories beside him. Another brushed his mane in careful strokes. A teenage girl with heavy anxiety sat against the fence and breathed until the shaking in her hands slowed. Midnight's Verdict responded in ways none of the reports had predicted. He lowered his head for children who were nervous. He stepped back when they needed space. He stayed close when they needed warmth. There were no commands, no reins, no pressure. For the first time in his life, no one wanted anything from him except his presence. Olivia documented everything. Her professional training told her this should not be happening. The same horse that had refused expert riders was now choosing to engage with children who had no expectations. She told Dorothy the truth. This horse was not broken. He had been overwhelmed and unheard. On the 28th day, Dorothy arrived early and found Midnight's Verdict trotting in the paddock, tail lifted, head tossing lightly. He stopped when he saw her and walked straight to the fence, nudging her shoulder. Dorothy laughed through tears she did not expect. She welcomed him back, not to work but to himself. That afternoon, Sterling Moore finally called. His voice was controlled and distant. He told Dorothy he had arranged a retirement farm and would send a trailer. Dorothy listened, then spoke calmly. She asked him to visit first. She asked him to see what his horse had become. After a long pause, Moore agreed. Sterling Moore arrived at Meadowbrook Healing Stables 5 days later, just as the early Montana frost began to settle on the ground each morning. His silver Mercedes looked strange, parked beside Dorothy's old pickup truck in the weathered barn. He stepped out wearing an expensive coat and polished boots, his posture stiff, his expression guarded. He looked like a man who measured life in numbers and results. Dorothy greeted him without ceremony. She did not try to convince him of anything with words. Instead, she led him quietly toward the riding arena. Inside, a therapy session was already in progress. 6 children stood scattered across the soft dirt, each with their own challenges and limitations. In the center of them all stood Midnight's Verdict. No saddle. No bridle. Just a simple halter and loose lead rope resting on the ground. The horse moved slowly among the children, his steps careful and calm. Moore watched as Wesley dropped a rubber ball by accident. Midnight's Verdict bent his neck, picked it up gently, and carried it back. When a girl with cerebral palsy struggled to reach a colored cone, the horse nudged it closer with his nose. When a nervous teenager froze in place, the horse stopped moving and waited until the boy relaxed. No one gave commands. No one demanded performance. The horse was choosing every action himself. Moore said nothing as the hour passed. His confident posture softened. His hands, once clasped tightly behind his back, dropped to his sides. After the session ended, Moore asked if he could see the horse alone. Dorothy agreed, and watched from a distance as the man entered the paddock. He stood stiff at first, unsure of where to place his hands or how close to step. Midnight's Verdict studied him for a moment, then walked forward and rested his heavy head against the man's chest. Moore sucked in a breath. Slowly, almost awkwardly, he lifted a hand and touched the horse's neck. He stayed there for several minutes, unmoving. When he walked back out, his expensive coat was covered in horsehair and dust. His eyes were different. Moore asked Dorothy if she could keep Midnight's Verdict permanently. Dorothy answered honestly. She said she did not have the money to feed a horse like him, let alone cover his medical care. Moore nodded and told her he would create a trust to cover every expense for the rest of the horse's life, along with support for the therapy center. The paperwork took weeks, but by early fall, Midnight's Verdict officially belonged to Meadowbrook Healing Stables. He became the heart of the program. Children changed. Wesley began speaking more at school. Others grew calmer and more confident. Parents noticed. Therapists called. As winter covered the land in white, Dorothy often stood by the paddock, watching the horse move gently among the children. The hollow-eyed animal who arrived by mistake was gone. In his place stood a horse with purpose. Everyone thought he had been sent to the wrong farm. Looking at him now, Dorothy knew there had been no mistake at all. Sometimes the wrong address is exactly where a soul is meant to arrive.